being able to work full time felt like a real thriving moment and maintain it. Like obviously I had to make decisions or, change things to maintain that. So like that, there's levels to the thrive. There's definitely a few more levels we can go up.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like a thriving artist is someone who can express themselves without hindrance. Yeah, as
Yeah.
often as they like.
Fork in the road between thriving and starving artists is where I'm at. I really like your work. I can't eat lights. I need new heights. Just want to make a living doing the work I love. Throw the notion of a starving artist out of the window. Take the elevator down to the ground floor and jump on it some more.
Hello and welcome to the Fork in the Road again. Today we're lucky enough to be joined by Aoife O'Dwyer from Limerick in Ireland, and I'm all the way over here in Australia. So the wonders of technology. Aoife is deep in the world of technology and Web3 and NFTs and AI and all of that space, and you explore. I need to read this: the gaps in human perception, which I really like that, and I think that kind of also applies not just to your artwork, but to the NFT and Web3 space. It's like
Mm.
it's hard for a lot of people to perceive that space. So yeah, welcome to the show. How you going?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. That's the first time I've had anybody make that correlation between like the Web3 space being in the gaps of human perception as well. We're already going down a rabbit hole. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I'm feeling
yeah.
good. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
I certainly feel that way about the NFT space. I have dabbled in it only very lightly, and what I love is that you've gone deep into it, and I feel if there's any questions that I need to ask, it would be you. But are you primarily an NFT artist, or where does your creativity flow?
Yeah, I was thinking about this recently actually. I kind of consider myself like an on-chain native artist because for me, my career, as it were, within art specifically, didn't really take off until I found myself in Web3 and within the NFT space. So everything I've been making over the last few years has been very much driven and influenced by the Web3 space. It's how I monetize what I make. It's how I earn my living. And like that, definitely, like there's some decisions because I was thinking about this. I was like, would I do things differently if I wasn't in the space or if this wasn't how I was going to try and sell my artwork. And there's definitely things that influence like the trends within the space or the technology. So like we see all these different waves of, oh, there's a new type of NFT protocol. So like, going through one of wands and then there's editions and now there's coins and like everything is like evolving in terms of what the tech can hold and what it can display and how it can be distributed. So every time something new comes along, there's this like moment of, okay, time to figure out how this fits into my practice and see if it changes or not. And in some cases, it doesn't change. It's like, well, I needed to make this visual thing for some reason, some urge. And then after the fact, it's like, okay, see where it fits in. Sometimes I'll create things specifically with like a protocol in mind or a platform in mind or some sort of distribution method, which is very specifically on chain. It's blockchain native. So yeah, I'm so incredibly embedded in the Web3 NFT on chain space that it feels hard for me to separate it. And also, I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
It's like I wouldn't have been able to do this without this space. It just wasn't happening for me in like the traditional spheres. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you a full-time NFT artist?
Yeah. I have been since 2022, which if maybe you're not familiar with how the last years have gone, but literally like okay, so the context is my background is largely in design, so like UI
Yep.
design, UX design, digital design. So I spent like 12 years like having an absolute great time in that world, which is also tech and creativity and people focused. So I was like, okay, this is a great place. And then yeah, I found myself in kind of Web3 NFTs in 2021. So I think a lot of people came in during that kind of big hype cycle. And then in 2022 things went ooh, but that was like immediately after I decided to quit my job. So I was like, it's
Yeah.
fine, it's fine, it's totally fine. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been I'm very stubborn in that way. My bullishness might be mildly delulu, but it's been working. And I've kind of like, I'm so committed to trying to maintain this as my like core income stream, I guess, or like just this is the
Hmm.
lifestyle that works for me. And being able to do it full time feels like an extreme privilege because things are so volatile. And I have made changes like in my life to stay here. So it's like I reduced my bills and my outgoings. I was like, okay, if I do this, that, and the other, like there are big changes that like not everybody would be able to do, then I can kind of stay doing this where I'm kind of on my own schedule. Sidebar, late diagnosed ADHD a couple of years ago, so that's also feeding
Yeah.
into this. So this need
Yeah.
for like autonomy and like really flexible working, it really drives it. And you can have that in certainly within design or within freelance culture for sure. But for
Mm.
me, just working off my own steam and off my own initiative works better for me and my brain. So yeah, I worked quite hard
Yeah.
to remain full time, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah. I find that really interesting point you've come up with there is it's something that I've done quite a lot as well is artists often think about, just like how can I make money out of this and how can I survive? But one of the things which is often overlooked, and it's something that I've done as well, I've had to like prune down my lifestyle to being very frugal and, because be as frugal as you can to support a lifestyle that you can immerse yourself in your art. I think that's it's a really interesting point you bring up there.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's not something that everybody can do. It depends on like your circumstances, your responsibilities, your commitments. But for me, it's just me and my wife. So like it was something we were able to do. We were like, okay, we'll downsize. So like we sold our house. We're converting a van. We're going to go do the van life thing. I was like, yeah, all I
Oh,
need is
cool.
internet access, really.
Yeah.
And we can be anywhere. So yeah, this is kind of the evolution. We're
Yeah.
in like this limbo transitioning period right now, which is a thing in and of itself. But yeah, for me, it was kind of like, I
Mm.
don't want to try and hustle harder to meet the commitments or the demands, the costs that I already have. I would rather reduce the
Hmm.
costs so that I can maintain, like not burn out, because burnout obviously is a big thing.
Yeah.
All creatives experience or like have, come close to it at some point. So yeah, this kind
Hmm.
of moment of, okay, how do I maintain this autonomy and this lifestyle which works for my brain, stay within a creative space, not burn out, and still be able to support myself financially. And
Yeah.
so far, I've managed it. Again, it's not something I'm not against finding other ways to support financially. But there's so many people who, work other jobs. And I will take on freelance clients and stuff like that from time to time too. But yeah, I think it's something that like, a lot of artists will question or try and figure out for themselves.
Mm.
I'm quite lucky that I've managed to, yeah, stay full time. And within Web3, like almost exclusively within Web3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on being able to do that. That's amazing. But I'm currently in a bus at the moment. This is why the room I'm in looks so strange. It's an old semi-converted school bus, so it's getting there. But working on it. Do you find the fact that you've had that period of time in design has because your NFT work is very recognizable, even though you're branching out from like hand-drawn art to AI art and to kind of you're doing some of this kind of meme kind of style stuff at the moment as well. But it's all very recognizably yours. Do you feel that design has really heavily influenced that?
Yeah. Big time. Um, like I think for a lot of artists, like yeah, there's this sense of, you spend this time at the beginning trying to figure out your style, your aesthetic, like what is your visual language, I guess. Like what how do I communicate visually as me and be recognizable and this kind of signature thing that artists either develop naturally as they kind of go on or like put a lot of effort into trying to figure out what it is. For me, when I first found myself in the NFT space, like initially I was just kind of curious about what was happening, and didn't necessarily come in thinking I would sell art here. But then when I decided to kind of take that leap and be like, oh, maybe these illustrations, which I've been doing kind of as a hobby, might suit here. Like there's work here that I can see resonates, that I can see an alignment here. So I was like, okay, maybe my people are here. But before I really got kind of really stuck into that, I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm going to kind of set myself some perimeters, which is a real kind of like design things. Like here's your limitations. You have to work within the brand guidelines, for example. So I kind of invented these like art brand guidelines for myself, and mostly around color. So color is kind of one of the core things that people will often tell me they recognize as something in my work that they is cohesive. And that's very deliberate and very by design, and very much coming from like a brand design background. So yeah, I picked these like 5 core colors that were like absolutely loved, and I was like, okay, I can only work in these 5 colors forevermore. What will they be? Now, obviously, as I've kind of branched out into AI, that's evolved a bit more, but there's kind of like a core essence or a vibe that carries through from that palette. And that comes into like how I review the AI work, how I edit it, how I curate it. All of it needs to feel like something I would have made anyway. So again, a lot of the AI work will be in say mediums that I don't have direct access to currently, like they may be more 3D or photographic. So yeah, it's like, okay, well, if I could use these tools competently, so 3D, for example, is something that I haven't been able to master. Photography, I do have a background in, but I don't have the equipment or the tools to be able to create the things. Or, I don't want to, a lot of the stuff I do, it's like, I don't want to put a model in a freezing cold lake in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, like, they're hard to do. So yeah, there are these things that I'm like, okay, what would I have created? If I could use these tools manually, what would I have tried to produce? And some of the outcomes is totally not producible, but that's also part of the beauty of the AI tools. But yeah, definitely a lot of the design background comes into curating, editing, seeing how things work together. I mean, my specialty was this kind of helping brands figure out how to communicate their message, their style, their product visually in a digital context. So like I do that as well. But it's more visually driven as opposed to design driven now.
Yeah. And you've got this collection of NFT works called the Foofees.
The Foofees.
What number are you up to now?
I'm on 110. So I've only 2 more.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, part of me is like, I wanted them done ages ago, but they've kind of, part of their thing is that they kind of don't abide to like human timescales. So it's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm nearly finished.
That's cool. So one thing I really wanted to ask you about this is because with that style, this is like your hand-drawn style. And are you actually hand-drawing?
Oh, yeah. They're all like Procreate characters. So I have this base that I started with, and there's a whole bunch of lore attached to them. So like there's different elements. So like the background colors will tell you what element they're attached to. So there's like space, fire, air, earth, and water. And then there's different levels. So there's like the standard foundational Foofees, and then there's Guardians, which are the ones I'm working on now. They're kind of a bit more special. And then there's really rare ones like Elementals, and there's Catalyst, and then the very last one is going to be Supreme. So like there's lots of these kind of maybe gamified elements into them. And the idea being that they could expand, and they have this whole world. There's like I have a whole document full of like the rules of their world. So like part of that is like the speed that they operate at, or like they're really connected to, or they're inspired by the mycelium networks that kind of live under forests, like the root system. So I was like, okay, that electrical system kind of works slowly. So if we were to perceive, if we could perceive if they live in the gaps, that's kind of, they're my origin kind of characters. Yeah, if we could perceive them, like they would be operating much slower, so they perceive us very fast. So like there's all these different things from like science and like maybe like fringe science as well that I kind of incorporated into their lore and their world. But yeah, they're all hand drawn. They take me hours and hours. Yes.
So on that idea, because I was drawing a whole bunch of animals for a kid's book, and I found, I mean, probably the difference for me is because I hadn't drawn for a long time, since I was a kid basically, and I'm taking up drawing late in life. And as I was drawing, my skills were improving as I was drawing, and my style, I'd have to kind of like rein my style back in. How do you do you find, I mean, over like 111 or 112, is it?
Yeah, 111.
How do you keep that style when you're obviously you're personally, you would be advancing or doing whatever with your own drawing? Yeah,
I actually redid them all the year before last. So part of the reason why they're taking so long is because when did I start it? Was it 2023? It must have been. I basically spent the majority of that year redrawing them, because when I started them as well, they were like, the canvas was like 2,000 by 2,000, so it wasn't great. A lot of people that were buying them were like, oh, we were trying to print them, but they weren't printing great. It's like, okay, I want to do them in 4K, so I was like, I wanted to do them bigger. And then as I went back to the early ones, I was like, oh god, my style, like how I do highlights and shadows and stuff is all changed. And then also I found like mistakes. I was like, oh no, I'm going to redraw every single one of them. So I did.
right.
So yeah,
So how does
I hard relate.
so how does 4K work in Procreate? Because I know I've tried to do some quite large prints to
I
be
run out of
actually
layers.
printed out physically, and then
Yeah.
that cuts down. You end up having like 3 layers or something. So how many? Am I doing something wrong, or are you suffering the same problems yourself?
Well, I have definitely more than 3 layers. I think mine seems to run out at like I get like 100 odd layers. I do run
Oh,
out,
really?
and so I end up making duplicates and then like flattening certain groups. So like, but I make
Yeah,
sure I keep the duplicate with like all the open layers, like the editable layers. So yeah, my iPad is struggling. She is
yeah.
struggling. Yeah, but it is hard. Like you do end up, especially for the really complicated ones, so like the elementals and stuff like that, where there's extra bits. Yeah, I always end up running out of layers. But yeah, like that, I just duplicate, flatten some stuff, and it gets tedious
Yeah.
towards the end, but we get there.
Just a quick intermission to say that the Fork in the Road podcast has a Patreon as well, where you get a whole bunch of special things. You get an extended hour-long advert-free things, like you get to ask the podcast guests questions. You get a blog where I deep dive things which, might help make you successful and me successful, because I'm learning along the way too. You can also chat with me one-on-one and talk about your art business and make it work together. Back to the interview.
With the ADHD and your artwork specifically, talking about the gaps in human perception.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this thing. Well, it's like, wow, it's like it fits perfectly with your artwork, and because you're seeing things that other people don't see, you are literally seeing in the gaps. You're noticing patterns and recognizing things that other people don't see. And I've apparently heard that the ability to be able to see otherworldly things like spirits and ghosts and things like that is ridiculously high with people with ADHD and autism. And I'm going, that's
Absolutely.
really interesting. That's so fascinating. And I'm just wondering, do you have any personal, because you're talking in otherworldly kind of things, have you had any otherworldly kind of experiences or whatever that inspire you, or any kind of
Yeah.
beliefs that kind of fit into that world?
I mean, I guess not explicitly, but that's fine because I would be probably very scared. But yeah, I think that concept for me comes from, I guess it's maybe science driven away, like perception as in like sensory perception. It was how it started. Now, that's not to say I don't enjoy a bit of woo. I absolutely love a bit of woo. And definitely for me, like a lot of what ties into it, it's not just this idea of like, scientific sensory physics, like all of that definitely feeds into what I think about in terms of the gaps of human perception. Because I mean, it all started because it was like this like little piece of information, which is like, oh, the human brain can't actually take in all of the information that's around it. It will just like whatever the percentage is, 10%. I don't know, was a number that might probably arbitrary now, but yeah, it's like, oh, we can only take in a certain amount, and then our brain will fill in the gaps to kind of create our reality, which is where this whole idea of like reality is objective, or objective reality isn't achievable because we all have our own
Yeah.
subjective experiences. And I was like, that's part of where that comes from, is because you're just depending on your brain to fill in the gap. And that's where that initial hook came from me. I was like, gap. I was like, what's in the gap? So it's like outside of what humans can perceive from a sensory perspective. So then like that's kind of, I mean, obviously that comes into like your nervous system and all that stuff. But it's like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah. So obviously from my experience, I'm only able to imagine human senses. But yeah, I became really interested in this idea of what other senses could there be. So I mean, I guess that feeds into that, like, yeah, extra sensory stuff. Whether that's like for the Foofees, for example, like you'll notice they only have eyes. So they do have a type of telepathy in terms of their
Hmm.
communication. That's not widely known, but I have written that down somewhere that I haven't shared. And so yeah, they can communicate in this kind of like telepathic way, or like the things that grow out of their eyeball holes.
Hmm.
They don't really have eyeballs, but they have eye holes, and the things that grow out are like symbionts. So these are like creatures that, yeah, they're not entirely the Foofy, but they're not entirely separate to the Foofy. So I kind of was really intrigued with this idea of, yeah, of like reciprocity within nature, and like, creatures and beings mingling or working together. And yeah, from like different sensory fields or like dimensions. I mean, I guess this feeds into dimensions in a big way. And yeah, for me, the Foofys are adjacent. So like there could be a Foofy behind you right now and you'd have no idea because they're outside of like your visual spectrum, like the light that they emit is outside of what we can physically perceive. So like there's plenty of creatures that can perceive, you know, ultraviolet or like infrared light, or like, you know, we know that animals perceive colors differently. So that's a big part of it as well. Like that feeds into it. And yeah, I do find it curious, like again, that kind of idea of what other senses could there be that we just don't have access to, or maybe we did have access to. So again, with the like the neurodivergent thing, it's like on a core physiological level, that's like all these extra brain neurons that didn't get pruned as you were kind of developing. So like you have physically have more connections in your brain. So again, that gets overwhelming if you're trying to process it all the time, which is what kind of can lead to the difficulties. But then fundamentally, I'm like, okay, there's more connections. So like, how far do those connections go? Oh, or the other thing that I was thinking about before was like this idea of time. So like when you talk about ghosts, for me, like I have this kind of idea that I enjoy, which is like, maybe we don't see ghosts, maybe we can just see at another time. So like this idea, this concept of time being all at once, you know, that it's not linear. So I was like, okay, maybe this idea of like you see ghosts, is like, well, maybe that person, maybe you're just seeing that person that was there 100 years ago, but you're just seeing through time. So like again, like a visual perception that sees through, you know, what we are aware of now in terms of like, sensory perception. This
I
could
think
go a
there's
lot of ways. Sorry.
I know. I mean, all this stuff fascinates me. I mean, the fact that telepathy and all these kinds of things are pretty much proven, but still kind of talked about as being kind of like, you know, pretty fringe stuff as well. I feel that we have, as a human race, I think we were at one stage capable of many things that we aren't capable of now, because we have filled our lives with so many things which dull down our senses in a way, or are kind of distract us from these senses. So I think a lot of that stuff is still there. And I'm just kind of interested, going from that into the world, how you saw your work moving into this space. And I heard you talking on I think it was a Spaces ages ago, and I was really fascinated with how you integrated your hand-drawn work with the AI, and what your process was. I think at the time you were doing these kind of scenes within a photographic kind of landscape with a model and bioluminescent mushrooms and things like this. Kind of what is your process with working with AI, and how do you feel? Because I know a lot of artists are scared of, for many reasons, of embracing AI, but you seem to have embraced AI in a very healthy way. And I'm just wondering if you wanted to talk about your process there a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's evolving. Like for me, immediately, and I like I'm not going to pretend like I'm technical enough to understand the intricacies of how these models really work. But in my mind, it was very kind of direct for me, like a direct correlation between like the human brain, the process. It's like, well, if I sit down to do a drawing, I'm going to need references. So I'm going to Google a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to try and, you know, obviously modify what I see, and I'm going to try and combine enough things that I create something new. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of what this model is doing. It's just like super fast and has access to all documented human creativity since wherever. So in my mind, I was like, well, it's probably going to do a better job at obfuscating other people's work than I am, because I'm probably going to end up by copying more closely what somebody's done. So I'm like, okay, all right, okay, I can see, or in my head, like I made that kind of connection pretty quickly. I was like, okay, so this is going to be a good tool initially for referencing. Again, I was like, okay, well, what would I Google for a specific, there's a specific element I want a reference for. Usually it's hens, or like a specific bug or a specific plant. I'm like, okay, I want to put a rose in here or whatever it is. And I ended up looking for a reference. So initially it became that kind of like, okay, I'm going to use these tools as a reference tool for drawing. Or for compositions, stuff like that, where I'm like, okay, these are the different elements I want to pull together, and let the AI do the work of collating those references and creating a new composition. And then I was still further obfuscated and trying, you know, build on it myself. And also very quickly, when I found it, and Midjourney is the main tool that I use for this stuff, when I realized that I could feed in my own work, that was quite exciting for me. Like I was like, okay, great. So if I imagine these AI tools, the image tools in particular, as this like database of like all collective consciousness of human creativity, I was like, I want to be in there. Like, I want my creative voice to be part of that. So I very willingly, opted in to feeding it my artwork, because when I tried to kind of prompt to create something in my style, it was very difficult for me. I still can't get it to, I mean, I'm not prolific or famous enough, I guess. So like there's some artists' work, especially like historical artists, that you can very directly, you can get their style like spot on, which is why I understand why some artists are reluctant to, because they've put a lot of effort into building those styles out, and they should have ownership of that. So like, I mean, that's one thing I will say, like I would never dismiss the fears of an artist when it comes to AI. It's not going to be for everyone. And I do think people should have the option to opt in or opt out. Unfortunately, I think probably things have evolved to the point where that's going to be hard to untangle. But for me, that wasn't so much of a worry, not because I kind of love and want to protect my style, because I did put a lot of effort into creating it, but more so because I did want to be part of, I mean, maybe I just didn't necessarily feel worried about like my style showing up in these kind of models, because like, I felt kind of quite happy and quite excited about the notion that, my contribution to creativity would be part of that, or could be called upon. So I would blend my artworks in. I would blend them with like other outputs that I gotten via just text prompting. Sometimes they're like children of like blends, and try to create these like hybrid styles. I really like that idea of like collaborating with the machine, which I was like is technically collaborating with all of humanity. If I kind of follow on from this idea of it being this database of all of human creativity so far, that felt quite fun and interesting. And then like as things have gone on, I've also spent some time working with some people who allow, there's a couple of platforms, they're companies, they're building platforms that can allow artists to build models based on their style that they can own and they can monetize. So like I think that gap between, there's these tools that are using my style and I didn't opt into it, and I can't, people are just making money off of my style. I understand that perspective from artists. So Titles and Wide Worlds are the two that I've been working with, but where you can, I'm training models only on my artwork that I can use to create and prompt for stuff that is in my like hand-drawn style. And like they're not like absolutely perfect, like you'd still know that they weren't done 100% by me. But for me, it's been super helpful on a couple of levels. So one, sometimes I'm just using the outputs directly. I'm like, I love this as is. And I'm obviously very upfront about that. It was like, generated from a model based on my work as opposed to drawn by hand. It's helped me again with compositional stuff. It's also a way for me to like maintain, or like there's a provenance element here to that in terms of my style. It's obviously it's connected to me and my wallet. And then also just from a physical standpoint, like I'm probably not going to always be able to physically do this hand-drawn style, which I've worked so hard on. Like, I have some joint issues. So I'm like, okay, there's an element here which means that this will maintain, I can, maintain ownership and control over this if I like. Or I can share it, like, I have that option. And it means that my style isn't going to just suddenly die with me. So there's like an element of that too, where it's like, I like this idea that it will continue on. And obviously there's other artists that could recreate it, to copy it, absolutely. And I don't know, I just never really felt too worried about it. I felt quite excited about, what it could be. And again, and as it ties to this idea of the gaps of human perception, I was like, okay, what about the gaps with the human machine interface? Or like a lot of the series I was doing was this concept of how does organic and inorganic interface, how do we connect, where do we connect? So there was a whole series which was like the Hellocean interface, which was like this idea of AI entities or human entities that could meet in a place, which was fictional, or it was it was virtual, but what would it look like? So I love this idea of like bionic or like bioelectric. Like we are all still running on electricity, just like machines are. So I'm really quite intrigued by that element of too. So like that all that work that I did in AI brought me to that as well. So it all feeds into like the evolution of my work and my style. And I mean, I guess curiosity is a big part of what helped me embrace it too. And also knowing that at the end of the day, if I'm kind of thinking of like, what's the worst? It's like, that my style gets ripped off and somebody else makes money off it. It's like, well, I'm the originator of this. I can just make something new, or I can make it better, or, I'm still me. I still have like the human perspective that I put into all this, which is present. Like, I think there's also this kind of sense of like, some people are worried that it's losing its humanity, but like in my experience anyway, the AI work that I make and that I enjoy as well, like that other people make, still very much has that human and that artist perspective. Like it's still guided by that human. It might be influenced by the wider pool, or like by like how obviously you can like personalize your models within Midjourney as well. So like a lot of what I'm outputting now is much quicker. It's looking like what I would produce because it's also trained on my style and my taste. Like there's all these things that feed into it, which, yeah, there might be a bit of homogeny which will come into it eventually, but then another human will bring in a new perspective, and it'll keep evolving. So I feel like there's lots of humanity within AI and AI artwork, and it's an accessible tool. Like I said earlier, there's mediums that I don't have access to in terms of like tools or like the cost, or like even like photography is a good example of settings. 3D work is something that there's such a big learning curve that it feels inaccessible, but that really suits some of the conceptual work that I want to do. So that's not closed off to me now. So like in a lot of ways, I'm quite excited about how much it opens up humans' ability, more human people's ability to create and express something that maybe they didn't have access to before, either from a physical perspective or from like a cost or like a tooling perspective. And like at the end of the day, like taste and editing and curating is all still really important. There's plenty of slop, of course there is. That's across the board in all mediums. Probably slightly higher within the AI field because it is, like there's a lot of people that aren't obviously putting that commitment and dedication to it. But yeah, for me it's been fun, and I'll continue to keep an eye on things evolve, because like who knows, like maybe things will end up really awful. But for now, I'm trying to embrace it with
Yeah. I'm not suggesting that they will. I think there's a part of it which is incredibly exciting, and there's another part of it's just like, well, hang on a minute. And it's like so funny. Like there's all these AI CEOs coming forward, going, like warning us about all the, what can we do about it? Well, like, you're the guys who made you made this thing. Like, what are we meant to do?
I know.
Yeah, but that idea of the human and the AI interface, like I've found personally, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it quite right, but I'm doing one where like I have everyone has weird dreams, but anyway, I've gotten into the habit of writing my dreams like a dream journal and into AI every morning. I've done about 120 now, and seeing how AI will recreate it, and it's a similar theme like a pen and ink style illustration. And so it's the randomness of human subconscious with the randomness of the machine, and it's like an endless well of ideas, like, because the dreams that I have, if I don't write them down straight away, they're gone. But because they have been captured, I go, oh, that's a really cool idea. I might be able to come back to later or whatever. You can just keep. So it is, it's a very useful tool in that respect. And I know you'll get a kick out of this. I did this thought experiment with ChatGPT, and to kind of write a little article on it's now 2040, and we're looking back 20 years at how society is advanced and how artists are thriving or not thriving and things like this. And one of the interesting things, like if AI can predict the future, by talking about the internet networks of being a biological network of mycelium organically grown throughout. I thought, you're kidding me, and I'm speaking to you tomorrow. It's like, yeah, that's what I had to tell you that.
Yeah, the mycelium thing, that's untapped. There's something going on with the mycelium for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, thank you for that.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me. I've been wanting to speak with you some time, and it's been very interesting talking to you. So thanks a lot. And if you ever want to come back on the podcast at any time and promote something that you're doing or talk about something that you're working with, that would be cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
I had fun.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fork in the Road podcast, or watching the Fork in the Road podcast. For those people watching on Patreon, we also have it as a video on Spotify and YouTube. If you like the idea of chatting with artists, talking about how you go from starving to thriving, how you become a successful artist, whatever that means to you, whatever a thriving artist means. If you like this kind of thing, you can support the podcast in many ways. Apart from becoming a Patreon, you can just share it with your friends, or you could leave a review on iTunes. I think iTunes do review. Whoever does reviews, if you look in your podcast channel, if it allows you to do a review, or if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, please like, and I won't be one of those podcasts that go, you got to give a 5-star review. If there's something about the podcast you don't like, let me know. Write it in the comments and see if I can, tweak it a little bit to make it work better for everybody. But yeah, 5-star review would be pretty awesome. But anyway, check you next time.